Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about simplifying an expression, and we're going to be using words like gigabyte, things like that, to be able to help define or be able to solve a problem that involves exponents. So let's get right to it. All right, first of all, a gigabyte is an amount of storage. So think of it like a file. You have a piece of paper. That's, let's say that's a megabyte. One character is a byte, and then to fill up the page, it's going to take 1,024 bytes to make a paper, as an example. Well, there's 1,024 megabytes in gigabytes. Oh my goodness, my brain shut down there for a second. So what we got to think about here is, how does all of this come together? Now, as far as what I just discussed, you really don't have to memorize any of that. That's just good information to know. What we're really looking for is be able to solve the idea of how many bytes of total storage space does a computer have when all we know is the idea of gigabytes. Well, we could remember the 1,024, or we could represent it using the idea of exponents a little bit more simply. So here's how it works. We know that there's free space, and we know that there's total space. Well, the total number of bytes is 64, or sorry, not bytes, the total amount of space is 64 gig, and the free space is 16 gig. Now, I'm saying gig to represent gigabytes. So if you hear me say gig equals gigabytes, and I'll point here. All right. So if you hear me say gig, that just means that. So these are common terminology when you're talking about computers. So forgive me for bouncing back and forth. And if I don't explain something, make sure you ask during class, hey, what did you mean by this word? Now, the computer has 64 gigabytes of total storage, and we can write 64 in terms of the 2 to a power. We want that because we know that a gigabyte is 2 to the 30 bytes. And so here we want to be able to have the same base, because if you remember, we've been dealing and solving problems when they always have the same base. We already have a base 2, we don't want to have to find more, so we're going to stick with it. So I know that it's got 16 gigabytes, and what I want to be able to do is be able to turn that the 64 of total space into an amount that is equivalent to the amount of storage that we have here for gig. Now, so I'm going to take that 2 to the 30, because a gigabyte of computer storage space is 2 to the 30 bytes, and I'm basically turning gigabytes into bytes. Well, that's going to be the same thing as taking 2 times what? Okay, so if we think about it, we want to be able to hit 64. So we take 2, that's 2 to the first, times 2, that's going to be squared, times 2, that's going to be cubed, times 2, that's going to be to the fourth, times 2, that's going to be to the fifth. I'm trying to show my hand here because I'm kind of keeping track. Times 2, that's going to be to the 6th, times 64 comes on my calculator, so I stop. So it took 6 times of multiplying by 2 to hit 64 gig. So that's going to be the same thing as, this is how many bytes are in a gig, and this is how many gigs we have. So if I multiply that, we should get the total amount of bytes. So again, this is the number of bytes in a gig, and this is the number of gigabytes we have. Free. So if I multiply the number of bytes in a gigabyte by the number of gigabytes we have, I will end up with the number of bytes in our computer. So that's going to be the same as 2 to the 30th times 2 to the 6th. And if we remember our rules, it's the same thing as copying down our base. And then because we're multiplying the same base by different exponents, or by exponents, we add the exponents. And what we find out is it's going to be 2 to the 36. We look up here. Number one, we should have already known we can't choose D because, well, we need 2 in our answer. And so it's either going to be 2 to the 34th. Well, that's not 2 to the 36th. And then B is 2 to the 36, so B is our answer, so we're going to fill that in, and we're going to move on, and we didn't even have to check the last option. Now pause the video and copy what is on your screen into your notebook. Now that you're back, anytime you have to rewatch the video for clarity or to remember something, you need to write what you picked up into your notes. Use arrows, circles, shapes, pictures, whatever else you need to, but add it to your notes to make them yours. Last, ladies and gentlemen, you are in school. When we're learning, it's about understanding the process, not about finding an answer. We'll see you tomorrow.